Pray for us, St. Joan. Pray for Father Altman. Pray for KJ so we can find him. Although he's putting a bunch of stuff up on a lot of things, so I hope he's okay. But he's working. We don't have anybody to work for him allegedly. I still think he's there, but I still think he's there. But pray for us, St. Joan. All the weird things in the world today. Um, it was space 84 to 86 that caused the big collapse in the Miami building. Excuse me, 78 to 84. And Mikhail, congratulations. All right, I'm just an actor. Congratulations. The episode just, okay, chapter. Congratulations, you're an uncle twice. The episode disagreed with me, and I was not able to leave my bed the next day. The others were in the same condition, but for this, one or another of us might have had the good luck that fell to the paladin's slate chair that day. But it is observable that God, in His compassion, sends the good luck to such as are ill equipped with gifts as compensation for their defect, but requires such as are more fortunately endowed to get by labor and talent what those others get by chance. It was Noel who said this, and it seemed to me to be well and justly thought. The paladin going about the town all the day in order to be followed and admired and overhear the people say in an awed voice, "Shh, look, it's the standard bearer of Joan of Arc," had speech with all sorts of conditions of folk, and he learned from some boatmen that there was a stir of some kind going on in the Bastilles on the other side of the river. And in the evening, seeking further, he found a deserter from the fortress called the Augustins, who said that the English were going to send men over to strengthen the garrisons on our side during the darkness of the night, and were exulting greatly, for they meant to spring upon Dumas and the army when it was passing the Bastilles and destroy it. A thing quite easy to do, since the quote-unquote witch would not be there. We thought that Joan of Arc was a witch. Pray for us, Joan of Arc. And without her presence, the army would do like the French armies of these many years past, drop their weapons and run where they saw an English face. It was 10 at night when the paladin brought the news and asked leave to speak to Joan, and I was up and on duty then. It was a bitter stroke to see what a chance I had lost. Joan made searching inquiries and satisfied herself that the word was true. Then she made this annoying remark: "You have done well, paladin, and you have my thanks. It may be that you have prevented a disaster. Your name and service shall receive official mention." Then he bowed low, and when he rose, he was 11 feet high. As he swelled up past me, he covertly pulled down the corner of his eye with his finger and muttered part of the defiled refrain. "Ah, tears, ah, sad tears." Name in general orders. Personal mention to the king, you see. I wish Joan, I don't know what that means. I wish Joan, okay, let's see if I can think. Oh, tears, oh, sad tears. Name in general orders. Personal mention to the king, you see. He was crying because he was going to have personal mention to the king. I wished Joan could have seen his conduct, but she was busy thinking what she would do. Then she had me fetch the knight Jean de Metz, and in a minute he was off for La Hire's quarters with orders for him and the Lord de Villars and Florent de Liege to report to her at 5 o'clock next morning with 500 picked men well mounted. The histories say that 4:30, but it is not true. I heard the order given. We were on our way at 5 to the minute, and encountered the head of the arriving column between 6 and 7, a couple of leagues from the city. Dunois was pleased, for the army had begun to get restive and show uneasiness now that it was getting so near to the dreadful Bastilles. But that all disappeared now as the word ran down the line with a huzzah that swept as the word ran down the line with a huzzah that swept along the length of it like a wave, and that the maid was come. Dunois asked her to halt and let the column pass in review so that the men could be sure that the report of her presence was not a ruse to revive their courage. So she took position at the side of the road with her staff, and the bataillons swung by with martial stride. Huzzahing, Joan was armed. Huzzahing, the martial stride huzzahing. Period. Joan was armed except her head. She was wearing the cunning little velvet cap with a mass of curved white ostrich plumes tumbling over its edges, which the city of Orleans had given her the night she arrived. The one that is in the picture that hangs in the Hotel de Ville at Rouen. She was looking about 15. The sight of soldiers always set her blonde, her, excuse me. The sight of soldiers always set her blood to leaping, and lit the fires in her eyes, and brought the warm, rich color to her cheeks. It was then that you saw that she was too beautiful to be of the earth, or at any rate, that there was a subtle something somewhere about her beauty that differed it from the human type of your experience, and exalted it above them. In the train of wains laden with supplies, a man lay on top of the goods. He was stretched out on his back, and his hands were tied together with ropes, and also his ankles. Joan signed to the officer in charge of that division of the train to come to her, and he rode up and saluted. "What is he that is bound there?" she asked. "A prisoner, General." "What is his offense?" "He is a deserter." What is to be done with him?" "He will be hanged, but it will not convenient on the march, and there was no hurry." "Tell me about him." "He is a good soldier, but he asked leave to go and see his wife, who was dying, he said, but it could not be granted, so he went without leave. Meanwhile the march began, and he only overtook us yesterday evening." "Overtook you? Did he come of his own will?" "Yes, it was of his own will." "He a deserter? Name of God, bring him to me." The officer rode forward and lowered the man's feet and brought him back with his hands still tied. What a figure he was! A good 7 feet high and built for business. He had a strong face. He had an unkempt shock of black hair which showed up in a striking way when the officer removed his morion for him. For a weapon he had a big axe in his broad leather belt. Standing by Joan's horse, he made Joan look littler than ever, for his head was about on a level with his own. His face was profoundly melancholy. All interest in life seemed to be dead in the man. Joan said, "Hold up your hand." The man's head was down. He lifted it when he heard the soft, friendly voice, and there was a wistful something in his face which made one think that there had been music in it for him, that he would like to hear it again. When he raised his hands, Joan laid her sword to his bonds, but the officer said with apprehension, "Ah, madam, my general." "What is it?" she said. "He is under sentence." "Yes, I know. I am responsible for him." And she cut the bonds. They had lacerated his wrists, and they were bleeding. "Ah, pitiful," she said. "Blood. I do not like it." And she shrank from the sight, but only for a moment. "Give me somebody to bandage his wrists with." The officer said, "Ah, my general, it is not fitting. Let me bring another to do it." "Another? Dieu parle Dieu. You would seek far to find out that You would seek far to find one that can do it better than I, for I learned it long ago among men and beasts, and I can tie better than those that did this. If I had tied him, the ropes had not cut his flesh." The man looked on silent while he was being bandaged, stealing a furtive glance at Joan's face occasionally, such as an animal might that is receiving a kindness from an unexpected quarter, and is gropingly trying to reconcile the act with its source. All the staff had forgotten the huzzaing army drifting by in its rolling cloud of dust, to crane their necks and watch the bandaging, as if it was the most interesting and absorbing novelty that ever was. I have often seen people do like that, get entirely lost in the simplest trifle, when it is something that is out of their line. Now then, Poitiers, once I was I saw two bishops and a dozen of those grave and famous scholars grouped together watching a man paint a sign on a shop. They didn't breathe, they were good as dead, and when it began to sprinkle, they didn't know it at first. Then they noticed it, and each man hove a deep sigh and glanced up with surprised looks at the wondering to see the others there and how he came to be there himself. But it was that way with people, as I have said. There's no way of accounting for people. You have to take them as they are.